So, 7 film directors, 2 celebrated writers done. We now move on to the 5 music directors who are well known and they're also singers. I'm sure there are no need for any guesses. Everyone knows who they could be. So, let's go without further ado to that. Yeah, so let's begin with Salil Chaudhary ji. And he is a music director, songwriter, lyricist, writer, and poet, as we all know. And so Gulzar Saab speaks extremely highly about this genius. He says the intoxication and energy that bursts forth when you shake and uncork a bottle of champagne, that was Salilda. His lethargy, his limitless talents, his thoughts flowed like a river. Terribly fretful, immense life force, a genius. He loved playing carom and ping pong, and dare anyone disturb him while he was playing carom or ping pong. He was always in need of money, though he earned a lot, he was quite a spendthrift. Now, this I'm sure none of us knew. Getting him to work was the most difficult task. Remind him about a tune, and he would say, "We will get to that. I just bought a car, let's all go to Powai." Now imagine that was Salilda, and what beautiful compositions he has given us, despite his lethargic and his fetish and obsession with carom and ping pong. Let's talk a little about Kabuliwala. Prem Dhawan had recommended Gulzar's name to write the song, as he was on a tour with Ipta, and then Bimalda asked him about the song and told him that Salilda was busy. And then Gulzar Saab says, I went to Salilda's music room, but he was downstairs playing tennis. I told him I liked a tune of Rajan Tarafdar's song of Ganga Amai Dubai Lere. He got annoyed that I disturbed his game with talk of work, told me to tell Kanu Ghosh, his assistant, and get the notes. Vimalda's car was heard suddenly outside, and Salilda rushed to the piano upstairs, and with such singular attention, he played that as if one would think he was on it for ages. He knew Bimalda was at the door, but Salilda sat like a hermit deep, and then, as if he had just caught a glimpse of Bimalda's presence, he said, What if we use Amay Dubaili in this song for Kabuliwala? Bimalda said, Salil, just do your work, and left in a huff. Car gone, and Salilda turned to me and said, Strictly finish the whole thing with Kanu before you go, as if I was the one holding back the work or escaping work, and he was already downstairs at the tennis table. I was nothing but a spectator in all this. The song Ganga Aaye Kahan Se, this was Salil Chaudhary, the man, and his music like a torrent in the mountains, tumbling from a high peak, beautiful, majestic, alluring, attractive. We now go to the next icon, and Hemanta Mukhopadhyay, the Indian music director, Bengali and Hindi playback singer. So there's so much he's written about him in those 12 pages. I have picked up 2 instances so that, we are able to dwell on it's so many instances. Like we all know of the Humne Dekhi Hai song picturization argument that Gulzar Saab had with Hemanta, and Hemanta said, it has to be picture. Lataji has to sing, and so Gulzar Saab said, how can that be? It's a man singing to a lady. However, they made it neutral and made a radio recording shown on screen, and it was Lataji who sang the song. So that's the story about that. Then his Bengali knowledge he attributes to that, and some more good stuff. Now let's listen to it. Hemanta was a very tall man, clad in a white dhoti and shirt, roaming around the city of Bombay in a Mercedes. There weren't many maverick Bengalis like this in the 60s, and I don't remember many rich Bengalis either. He was a singer, a composer, and a film producer as well. I first met him the day he was set to record the song Ganga Aaye Kahan Se for the Hindi version of Kabuliwala. As soon as he entered the recording room, he lit a cigarette. The mic in front of him, a smouldering cigarette in his hand. The fact that Hemanta was going to sing well was obviously a given. That was for certain, a constant. The recording got over. Surprised, I couldn't help blurting out what was in my mind. Hemanta, singers seldom smoke because they're afraid of hurting their vocal cords. And there you were puffing away while recording. Hemanta, anger, dejection, joy, all had a similar expression. Through a hint of a smirk, he replied, Without it, I don't get the perfect grain in my voice, Gulzar. It's never clear without it. So that was Hemanta for us. Then there was some, I mean, the other nuggets that Gulzar Saab shares is that Hemanta was the one who made the down payment for his first house, which he bought. And Gulzar Saab was so touched, so that he moved from his rental to his first self-owned house. And Hemanta told him very clearly, I will deduct the money from you. Your job's permanent. You see, you're going to work for me all my life. And that is how Gulzar Saab has his first house. Um, Now let's see what he says. Speaks about yeah. Okay, the next instance is about this. Okay, about his gentleman, and Gulzar Saab says, "I don't think I've ever met a gentleman such as Hemanta. He could have just not said anything to me, or he could have just called. But Hemanta actually came by to tell me that one of the films which we were doing for our, because it had flopped, he was not doing the next project. And so that's gentlemanly for me. And I think, I mean, I admire him so much for this. Mm, so the other thing he mentions is that Hemanta then moved back to from Bombay to Kolkata again. He made plans to move, and the shifting process had been on for a few years already. And gradually, he wrapped up all his affairs and moved out of Bombay. I feel he had done the right thing. Bombay is very ruthless. They could not have accorded an artist of Hemanda's caliber the respect he truly deserved. Rather, he would have faced disrespect and found himself in the depths of obscurity. Hemanta could effortlessly contain within himself a sense of immensity, but not everywhere can an immense artist like him be contained. Not everyone has a big heart like Hemanta. So that's Hemanta for us. We now move to beloved Kishore, singer, music director, actor. So Gulzar Saab talks very fondly like about all the icons, and he begins with a mad genius, my friend. It is hard to believe that in real life too he had such a sense of humor. All the urban legends about him are true, because only someone like him could have lived such absurd truths. He also had no sense of time. He would turn up on shoots when he wished, leave when he wanted. But when he was around, it was a time of laughter and sunshine. The episode of Anand. He was to play Anand a few days before the shoot. He comes there, all costumes had come up. He turns up bald. We were also shocked. He went around dancing and singing, and Rishida couldn't do a thing. One could never be angry with Kishorda for too long. When he wanted to producers to spend some money and get tea for all the musicians and the staff, otherwise he would not record till the tea came for all. This was during the recording of Bharosa. It was part fun and part justice. Gulzar Sab then goes ahead to say it meant deprived of an essence or world, the essence of Kishorda, which had its own eminence, intoxication, and feeling, all unique. The madness, childlike, naughty streak of his, none of it was fake. That audacity and talent to live one's life on one's own terms, Kishorda had them in spades. His voice was a divine gift. The greater gift was his head, his intellect. No matter what life he lived, colorful, crazy, dedicated to music, he was always very conscious, 100% aware in the madness. Kishorda had internalized that exquisite pathos to distinctive and to of Saigal's songs and turned that inspiration into magic of his own. Except R.D Burman and Rahul, no one else sensed this pathos in him. Rahul made Kishorda sing songs which were like wounds, longing for a soothing caress. In his own films and songs, he composed this cry of pain, which was very more evident. He wished to indulge in this feeling of pain only a side that was inaccessible to others. His heart was pure and untainted. Neither did he accept hurt nor did he reject it. Each time he fell in love, it was with his heart and completely with his soul. His love for Madhubala is well known, unlike what the tabloids talk about him. The minute it was 6 p.m. and the shoot was still, if it was going on, he would leave sharp at 6 p.m. to be with Madhubala, and there was no compromise in that. Our reality was not the same and is not the same as his. He wanted to cast aside the former and inhabit his own instead. That is what we are, in our ignorance, will term his madness. So, and in response, Kishore Da would sing, Zindagi ek safar hai suhana. That is our beloved Kishore Da. The next icon that we move to is, of course, Rahul Dev Burman, Panchamda, and I think he's attributed 14 pages to this genius of a music director and singer. Panchamda's cooking. Hotness in Panchamda's food would often present itself very creatively and sensually. He grew all varieties of chilies on his garage roof, from Burma, Singapore, Sri Lanka. He would crossbreed them too, just like his music. He would innovate in taste. He would bubble over with joy like a child when the chilies would ripen and reach their prime. I met Pancham at a film meeting for Bimal Roy's and SDB's, where they had come to discuss the music with Pancham, and he brought a dugga along to provide the rhythm. Gulzar covers all the points he speaks in Brahmanand Singh's film Panchaman Mix Mujhe Chalte Jana Hai. So all the points I will not repeat. If you've seen the film, you know all the points very well. Pancham was set to turn composer with my film Parichay. He goes on to speak about the making of Musafir Hu Yaro. He also goes on to speak about 4 iconic songs he mentions. Tune Sari Mein Urasli Chabiyan Ghar Ki. His streak of perfectionism for this one, it was like an addiction for him. When he wanted to understand a sound or a tune, he used to do it from within his very soul. Then again, when the genius streak would show, results would be almost instantaneous. Om Hajire from Khushbu and the soda bottle story we all know. He always tried to capture the mood of the film. He asked me, don't villagers have panchakis? And he got Basuda to play the double bass and asked him to get 2 bottles and soda, and he emptied those, and that's how the kuk sound was produced in this song. He then goes on to describe how Dhanno Ki Aankhon Mein was made with his new guitar, double bass guitar that he had got. Then there's Choti Si Kahani Si. It was in Pancham's repository of leftover tunes, imagine that. Gulzar says, the more I'm reminded of Pancham's genius, the more it brightens up my soul. I can't help but reflect on what a huge personality I have worked with. Then Dil Parosi Hai, we all know that Bob was Asha Bhosle, and she one day told Pancham and Gulzar that, that if both of you are not going to work on it, just let's forget about it. And then Pancham that then tells Gullu, let's work on this, just shut out everything and finish this. Otherwise Bob will get very angry with me, and that's how Dil Padosi was made. So Gulzar Sab calls it Pancham's Gharana. They both had a silent communication and what we call chemistry. So Gulzar Sab says, used to always be in a hurry. No one knew why. A large part of me departed with Pancham. Gulzar says, and now what remains of me is but half incomplete or half complete, as you may call it. Let me just see if I could read out 69 about Choti Si Kahani Si Hai. So, in fact, okay, so there is one here. He speaks of about his genre. His ability to constantly shift and change was reflected in his music. There is no one genre that can be picked to understand Pancham. Quite possible he didn't have something like a trademark tune. Anything different would attract him. If there's such a thing as Pancham's Gharana, then perhaps it would comprise his experimental works. We had an absolute understanding that stems from a sense of belonging. Can it be called belonging at all, or was it that both of us had kept a part of our own selves in safe custody with the other, which ensured our views always took on similar hues? Perhaps that's what it was. It's what makes the most sense to me. That's Panchamda, Rahul Dev Burman. I now move to the next and the final of the music directors that he mentions, and that's Bharat Ratna Raman Magsaysay Award, Pandit Ravi Shankar, and sitarist. So About Pandit Ravi Shankar, I think this is the only place where Gulzar Sab actually pens a poem for him for his performance, and nowhere else. I'll read about. I knew him, though not personally, from the time of IPTA. He had composed music for the film Dharti Ke Lal, and all the members of the IPTA had worked with him. From there, cut to New York, my first time in America. I had gone there just to meet Pandit Ravi Shankar. He then goes on to describe how he actually met him. I called him over the telephone and was greeted by an affable voice at the other end. If I like the script only, then I will do it, Gulzar. You can send me your script. Gulzar Saab said, what if I go myself and read the script to you? You want to come to New York? Yes, sir, I want to. A moment of silence at his end, and then he said, fine, come, I will make arrangements for your stay. So I went, and we went straight to a hotel. In the evening, the doorbell of the hotel rang, and ushered in my moment of shock and surprise at the sight of this middle aged gentleman clad in swirly tee and jeans. It was Pandit Ravi Shankar. Then he describes Mira's 12 songs and how that got done. Um, as we all know, that Lataji had not wanted to sing and make another Mira album. It was already just made by her and Ridhanath. So she was out of the project, and hence Lakshmikant Pyarelal ji also didn't come on the project. That's when Gulzar Saab wanted somebody who was non-controversial. And we racked our brains and came up with a name, someone who was not from the industry, and that was Pandit Ravi Shankar. So that's when he decides to make Mira with Panditji's help. And so he speaks of this making, and it's beautiful. I'll just read out a little part. The fact that he would drop by to meet us in person had been beyond my imagination. We spoke, and it was decided we would visit him the day after with the script. Once we met and the situation had been explained, he asked, I don't want to go into any hassles. Why is Lataji not singing? He told us he wished to talk to Lataji before he began. She was in Washington on a musical tour at that time, and I got in touch with her, and she said, okay, I will definitely speak to him. Let him call me. Mukeshji also was accompanying her on this tour, and I spoke to him too, and it was for the last time, for it was during this tour that Mukeshji passed away. Then, of course, Panditji didn't call him, and then he said, I'm on a tour, let's do this. And then Gulzar Saab tells Panditji that I will accompany you in between your performances, we will compose the music. Panditji was, he had a soft smile lighting up his face when he said this. And Gulzar Saab says, I accompanied Panditji to London, and we managed to do some work there before I had to return. Accompanied him to Amsterdam as well, and this is where he describes his performance. Such a beautiful, poetic, lyrical way of writing it. And this time I was starstruck. The concert was organized inside a church in Amsterdam, dusk to dawn. A number of renowned artists were part of the lineup. Panditji took the stage a little before midnight, and I finally learned what it takes to create such a night. From dark black to dark blue, to some dark, unfathomable shades of night, it was enchanting. The spell eventually broke when I observed the first rays of sunlight filtering through the high panels near the roof of the chapel. Strains of Rag Bhairavi were wafting from the sitar. Panditji welcomed the dawn like he had ushered in the night, as if the fragrance of the new dawn was wafting in with his musical notes. So that's how Mira's music was done. Panditji did everything. He recommended Vani Jairam, and Gulzar Saab was extremely happy because he had earlier worked with her in Guddi with for Boleri Papihara. And the 12 compositions were beautifully made, and that's how Mira's 12 songs or bhajans were made. Then another interesting episode he mentions with Sukanya years later, when he meets Panditji with Sukanya and his little daughter Anushka in Agra. After chatting for a while, Sukanya suddenly asked me a question. I look like a bit like Rakiji, don't I? I was stumped. What could be a reasonable response to such a question was beyond my reckoning. No matter how much I juggled with the words, languages, and sentences, I realized that I was yet to master the art of coming up with a big, smart reply. The two of you are beautiful in very different ways, I faltered instead. It's too difficult for me to judge. However, I did notice a ghost of a naughty smile flitting across Panditji's lips. I did not try and decode it further. So that was the beautiful part where Rakiji is mentioned again, and so that ends the five music directors that Gulzar Sab speaks about, and in the superlative, absolutely beautiful. Let's move to the next icon, and